Welcome to the LeaderCast podcast, a weekly deep dive into the stories that transformed our guests into leaders worth following. I'm your host, Joe Boyd. If you've been enjoying the podcast, thank you so much for being a listener. One simple thing you can do to help us out is give a review wherever you listen. This week's episode is an extra special one. Our guest is Kay Cannon. Kay has written and produced some of the funniest TV and movies you've ever watched, like the Pitch Perfect movie trilogy, 30 Rock, and New Girl. Our Hollywood correspondent, Holly Walker, had an opportunity to chat with Kay for our program called Amplify. And today we're sharing the entire interview, including an additional 30 minutes of the conversation that was not played during the Amplify program. I love what Kay shared about building a relationship with your team, navigating leadership as a woman in a male-dominated industry, and how she tackles getting unstuck. Prepare to smile and laugh and learn. You're really going to enjoy this one.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so excited to introduce you to my friend. She's a writer, director, producer, and a bad mother. Shut my mouth. Well, I'm just talking about Kay, then I can dig it. Kay Cannon!
Holly Walker! Thank you for having me. That might be the best intro of me I've ever heard in my life.
That's because we're good friends.
Yay.
Maybe. Okay, we're going to start with a game. Very excited. I'm going to pull some questions out of this bucket and ask you. Okay. I have no idea what these questions are. I have no idea. None whatsoever.
Who put them in there?
I don't know. I think.
Which one of you guys put them in there? Okay,
you ready?
This is fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who was the best example of leadership in your childhood?
Ooh. I would have to absolutely say my parents.
Of course.
I mean, my teachers were really, really great, but my parents, because it was really interesting. My dad was an attorney and my mom was like his right-hand lady for like 30 years. She was a school teacher and then had a bunch of kids and then worked with my dad. So I saw them, go to work together. Essentially, she was his paralegal. But I saw them go to work together, work really hard, come home, work really hard to be parents. That concept of hard work, that concept of loyalty to each other, to the family, that was instilled pretty young.
Yeah, I like your dad and mom. What food or dish reminds you of your childhood?
Oh, that's great. Chicken Parmesan would be, I don't eat chicken anymore, but that was something that, like, I remember there was a restaurant in around where we lived, and whenever we went there, like, we knew the owners, and the owner would be like, I'm making that chicken parm for you. Anything with cheese, really. I think, like, cheese and ranch dressing are staples of the Midwest lifestyle.
Would dip cheese into ranch dressing?
I would dip anything into ranch dressing. Don't you?
No. I dip anything into ketchup. Like I do grilled cheese sandwiches into ketchup. I put macaroni and cheese. I put ketchup on it. Like I'm very...
Like a 7-year-old.
That's exactly right. Okay. One more question. What advice would you give your younger self?
I would tell my younger self, this is pretty cliche because I think a lot of people say this, to chill out. I would, to enjoy everything. I'm from a very small town. I had to get scholarships to go to college. Like it was all work, get the scholarships, get the good grades, get, all of it. And I just really didn't take a breather. And I think I would definitely say, like, it's gonna be okay. Like you worry so much,
Do you still worry a lot?
Yeah, but I think now, as I've gotten older, I feel like I have tools in my little tool belt to, like, calm myself down, have perspective in a, much quicker than I would have when I was younger. And worrying is just, what was it? Praying for what you don't want. I think learning that phrase.
Wow, that's the first I've ever heard that
Really?
Phrase. Worrying is praying for what you don't want.
It's just praying for what you don't want.
Wow.
Yeah. And like the example that was given to me that I never forgot was, if you're on a motorcycle, which I wouldn't be because I'd be worried about crashing, but if I was, and you're in between two trucks and you're constantly worried about hitting one of the trucks, your mind is going there instead of looking forward and focusing on the path in front of you. When you veer off into worry, then you will hit the truck. But if you look forward, you're good.
You are a wise woman, Kate Cannon.
I learned all of this on a pillow.
That is hilarious. A lot of people know that you wear a lot of hats. Writer, producer, director.
Berets. Top.
Bowlers.
Cowboy.
Exactly. But a lot of people may not know that you do it all without coffee.
Oh, yeah. Can't stand it.
Okay.
Never had it.
First, I want to know how. And secondly, what do you have against Juan Valdez, the creator of the delicious beverage from the hills of Colombia?
I've never liked the smell of coffee.
What?
I never liked the taste of coffee. I also have a lot of energy just naturally.
You do.
And I've never done cocaine. And I think because I know myself, and I think if I did, my heart would explode because I'm already like up. And when I'm working, like especially when I'm directing, like I can function off of very little sleep. I can only have 3 or 4 hours of sleep. I think being a writer at 30 Rock, which was like 18-hour days, and it was perfect training. And I did that for 6 years. Like that has trained me now to just be up and okay. And I don't know, this is so cheesy, Holly, but it's like, I do get up and smile and I'm grateful to be alive. And I can shut my brain down throughout the day. Like, especially like when directing a movie or something, like I'll walk outside, I'll go for walks, I'll take the breathers,
And you can shut down and just relax and just breathe and stuff.
And then
excellent.
Kick it back up.
Excellent. Yeah, I remember when you wrote your pilot for 30 Rock to interview into it, and you were like, well, sometimes you just got to write 14 hours in order to get something done. And I was like,
yeah.
Okay.
Because that script I thought I had a week to finish that script. I was probably like 60% done. And maybe not, maybe just half. And then Tina Fey was like, I need it in 3 days.
Yep.
And then Tina Fey was like, I need it tomorrow morning. And when Tina Fey says she wants it tomorrow morning, you got to give it to her.
Yeah. So that was your first professional writing gig.
Right.
And I remember you getting it and it was like, yay. So that was a classic sitcom and all of those characters had very specific voices. How did you find your own voice while writing other people's voices?
That's a really good question because I think about this a lot. And when I'm mentoring other people and I say to them, like, take the time to find your voice. I remember someone in our comedy world talking about how a 23-year-old didn't have their voice and they weren't going to hire them because they didn't know what their voice was. And I said, did you know what your voice was when you were 23?
Exactly.
And this person said, yeah, totally. And a couple people around were like, oh, yeah. And I was like, really? At this point, I'm in my early 30s. And I thought, what? Like, how did you even know yourself yet? Like, it's so easy to look back and say, oh, I knew what I wanted to say in this world and who I was and what I wanted to be. And I didn't know it all. And so what I did was I took the time to find, like, I thought at 30 Rock, it felt like I was going to grad school for comedy, comedy writing and just comedy in general. And so I was starting to have some discernment over my own tastes. And I was really stopping and going, what is it that I really like? What movies do I really like? What TV shows do I not like? And I watch everything. And I pay attention to what I don't like. And then I would write down like why I didn't like it, or I'd have big conversations about why I didn't like it. And I think I found my voice through doing that because I've realized I love a sports movie and I love music and I love a soundtrack. Like, and growing up, it's like I listened to like the Karate Kid soundtrack forever, the Boomerang soundtrack, Bodyguard.
And you love Rocky.
and I love Rocky, and I love an underdog story.
Mm-hmm. So do I.
So it is not surprising to me that my first big thing on my own was Pitch Perfect, because I wrote that as a sports movie, and it had singing, and like it had like, you know, a soundtrack that did something, and then I just always feel like I'm an underdog, always, to this day. Like right now, that is my worldview. My worldview is I'm an underdog who's scrappy, who's gonna like, has to work that much harder to get the thing, you know? And so those are the stories I like to tell.
Cool. Now, if someone isn't in the writing arena, the comedy arena, different types of leaders, how would you help them find their own voice? Like what advice would you give to them?
I would definitely tell them to figure out what's important to them in life. Kind of like, what is your moral compass? What are your core values? Because if you understand that about yourself, if you understand your core values and you make a mission statement of your own, like in any business, in any company you have a mission statement, you have a North Star. And I think then you find your leadership voice, because you are adhering to all of those core values and the mission statement that you've set for yourself.
You have to Jerry Maguire yourself.
You kind of do. I mean, you have to, at least if you understand what's important to you, then that works through every single decision you make, every single speech you give, every single meeting you run is all based off of your core values, your mission statement, your North Star.
And then you complete yourself, as it were. Do you get writer's block?
I don't, but want to know why?
Why?
Because I will literally put in the script, blah, 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 or she's going to say something like this. I'll literally write, she will say something in this area. I'll put X's of just like, I'll know the general idea of how someone's going to talk. But and I spend so much time in the outline and story phase that, there you might get blocked in that you're just like, I don't know what to do here in this part of the story, or here's a story hole. And I might go for a walk or something like that to try to figure that out. But when it comes to where I'm actually like barfing out the first draft, and I call it a barf out pass, no, because I've done all the work on the A side.
So how do you get yourself unstuck? You go for walks?
I go for walks. I watch Bravo. I have a snack. I literally just take the brain break, and I'll work out, and then usually when I'm working out, like maybe 10 minutes in or something, it'll be like, oh, okay, yeah. And it's so funny because like I do a lot of writing with my husband, and we'll like fight about something for an hour and a half. It might just be like a word or something like that. This just happened where we were like really stuck on a joke. And then I was like, well, we got to go pick up Lenny, our daughter. So that walk to go pick her up from school and then come back. And then we had it. And it just kind of came quickly to us.
It lets your brain do something else and relax and not focus on it, which allows something to come into your brain.
And anytime story-wise, if something's too hard, and I think this is a kind of a universal thought too, and you don't have to be in the business to think this way, but if something is too hard, like if there's some story point that is just too hard, you cannot figure it out, it is probably wrong. And then you have to like take a step back, get some perspective, and go like, oh, maybe there's 2 steps ago, 3 steps ago,
I see.
We have to adjust. Because it's like going through a maze, and then you take the first route and you're like, oh no, we didn't make it. I'll do that again so my arm's not in the way. Like you go up, you've got 1, 2, and 3 as your options, and here's the little pot of gold. And you spend so much time on one, and you're like, oh no, that's not the right path. So we have to like take a step back and figure out what the right path is.
Very cool. So what type of advice would you give someone in a different business, like when they get stuck on something?
Well, I think if you get stuck, you take a break, clear your mind, clear your head. There is so much value to clearing your head. There is so much value to walking. There's so much value to fresh air. There really, truly is. It's that thing of like, if the ripples in the water, if there's rippling, you can't see. But if there's calm waters, you can. And so I would say to find calm, find stillness, and then let the answer come to you.
I find that if I can't think of a joke, or if I'm like working on something and I can't do it, I will go take a shower. And for some reason...
You have a shower epiphany.
I do. And it's amazing. And I don't know if it's because I don't have a pencil and my brain was like, I'll give it to you now. Or if it's just the freedom of like, yay, lather, so blah, blah. Wait a minute.
I half read an article that explained this.
Really?
And so let me share with you my non-expert of what I kind of remember from this article, which is, I think there's something with the water. We're like 90% made of water. And so when it calms our mind, our thinking in such a way that it's allowing for those thoughts
ideas
to come in,
those
it's
epiphanies
to come through. Again, it's been a long time. I really need to Google it. Do you remember when I never had Mick Napier as a director, but I was taught one of his things that I kept with me forever, which is, did you remember hearing him say in emotion, if you're in emotion right now, it's not the time. So if something happens to you at work where you're really heated and your knee jerk is, you go from 0 to 60 and your emotions are high, that is not the time to make the decision.
Wow.
That is not the time to approach somebody at work or wherever, or your relationship, whatever it is. Wait till you are out of emotion. And I think about that a lot when I'm in a position of leadership.
That makes a lot of sense. Because
this is not to say that being a woman, you shouldn't have emotions, because even anger is an emotion that our male counterparts seem to have.
Absolutely.
Often, but,
absolutely. But that's not when you should be making the grand decisions for work or for your life.
Right.
No, that makes perfect sense. Speaking of men, you have actually stepped into a lot of roles that have typically been held by men. Executive producer, director. Is it difficult stepping into those roles?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so. And I think if anybody is like, nah, it's no big deal. I mean, for a white woman, it's difficult. For a black woman, it's even more difficult. And making sure that we understand that. Because I mean, look, I directed a rated R studio comedy, and that has only been done by, I think, 9 women. I think I was the 9th. I might have been the 10th.
That's insane.
And in the history of film.
That's insane. That's insane.
And almost all, not all, but almost all the producers were men, and they are delightful, and I love them, and I learned so much from them. But is it hard? Everything's hard. Anything great is not easy. So I just want to preface it by saying that. I definitely don't want to use it as a crutch, but the truth of it is, yes, it's hard, because you have to do it better and prove your competence more. And I'm not just saying that because of my own personal experiences, although I did have personal experiences. I've also been told that quite a bit. Like when we went in to sell what became Blockers, I went to all the different studios and pitched this with Point Grey, who is Seth Rogen's company, and Evan Goldberg, their company. So I have and they're hugely successful. Those guys are top. It was great. We had a cast of Leslie Mann and Ike Barinholtz and John Cena. So we're going in to these rooms, and Nathan Kahane, who ran Good Universe and one of the producers at the time, and he was instrumental in me getting this, hiring me, and I love him, and he plucked me out, based on just potential. And he said to me after we went and pitched around, he's like, I have gone into rooms with male directors with half the portfolio you have that didn't have to answer the questions you had to answer, didn't have, and the truth, and we sold it to Universal, which is great, but I had worked at Universal for almost 10 years with the Pitch Perfect franchise. So like I had a wonderful relationship with Universal, and they trusted me, and they were willing to give me the shot. It's all about getting the shot, but to get the shot that's where it's the hardest, I think. And I think it's getting better now because we're being vocal about it now, and we are shaming them. And, like 2018, there were only 4 female directors who directed a movie that were in the top 250 movies, right?
Wow.
4. That is the same percentage that happened in the 80s. So in all that time, like it had gotten actually worse. So those numbers coming out, like that we start to shame them. We start to say you have to do better. And, that's just gender. Like you start talking about race, that's a whole other, issue, and all intertwined. And the hard part is making it so they don't think we're always an anomaly. That the success that we have, that Pitch Perfect is an anomaly. They like to call a female-driven movie as a success. They often call it a sleeper hit. And it's so annoying because you're just like, how many sleeper hits are there? Like, because they're surprised that it did well. Because, and they have to worry about things that I don't have to worry about, and the business side of it that I as a creative, I don't even think about it. I just want to tell like the stories I want to tell.
Well, I'm thrilled that more women are now stepping into those leadership roles, and throughout the entertainment, but also just in business in general. So what would you tell those women who are now stepping into leadership roles for the first time? What advice would you give them?
Well, it's really interesting because I think now the tides are changing. But if you look back in the last 20, 30 years, women who have gotten to the highest, at least in our field, took on the culture, the male-dominated culture. Like that's how they got there, right? So they played the game and they played it well. And what I'm looking for in the leaders of today is like to not conform to the culture of the industry, whatever industry you're in, but to be the leader that is good for for your gender. There is a studio exec who fought like crazy to get maternity leave, like a good amount of time for maternity leave. And she fought like crazy for this. And that's what you want. That's what you want your leaders to be doing, especially when they're women. It's like come in and like, how can we make it more equitable for everybody?
That's wonderful. What would you say to leaders? How can in their workplace they combat double standards?
I think these days it's just call it out. What you resist persists, whatever the phrase is. It's like, what does Sarah Silverman say? If it's talkable, it's manageable, or something like that. Like, we have had generations and generations of like, if I may, for you and I, we just dealt with it, right? We put our head down, we did the work, and we dealt with it. And I think that leaders now, and how I like to lead, is like, I'm just gonna say it. I'm gonna say the double standard. I'm gonna call out the double standard. I'm not gonna tolerate the double standard. And there's some things you can't control. There's some things like you either have to, like we talk about pay disparity. It's like, if I want to do the project, I might say yes, even though I know I'm getting paid less. But it's because I really want to do the project, and I have no poker face, and I'm like, yeah, okay, And what I decide to accept, that's on me, and that's something I reconcile with myself. But I definitely have been vocal of going like, wait, this is the third movie of a very successful franchise. What am I getting versus what did these guys get? Who did whatever too?
Exactly.
And I just the fallout is the fallout, and I don't care about the fallout anymore.
What should our leaders be doing in society to change it?
I mean, the first and foremost, the thing I think about all the time is safety. And what I think that I work with a lot of the same people and like have repeat customers. And I think the reason I do is because I try really hard to create a safe environment. And what I mean by that is you can say anything you want to me. I'm not easily rattled. I want you to over communicate. I want you to tell me how you're feeling. That to me makes you feel safe. It makes you feel like you can pitch an idea, that you can fail, and you're not going to get fired. So I would ask leaders or I would advise leaders to do the same in any place of work. If you have people who feel safe working with you, you're gonna get the best versions of them.
Humble yourself to be able to hear someone.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how would you advise leaders to share the spotlight?
I think if you have a hard time sharing the spotlight, you're insecure. And so when you don't have a hard time sharing the spotlight and you give people their flowers, you are showing them that you are secure. And I think it'll go a lot farther for them.
I also think that lifting other people up helps lift you up as well. It's lifting up everyone.
Yeah.
So if I'm saying bravo to you, like that's great for the whole team if you're a rock star. So why not give you your kudos as well?
Right. And this might be different. It might be, I can understand why in other professions, you might not want to say like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Because in other businesses, that might be like a shark situation but I found great value in doing that because when I first started directing, because I had put in the 10,000 hours of being on sets and writing and whatever, and in the comedy world, like I knew I can get performances out of people. I knew what I could do really well. And I just shared with my DP, my director of photography, and a couple members of my crew where I was like, here's what I don't know how to do. And by saying that, like when I interviewed for my DP, I was like, I don't always know where to put the camera. And the DP I ended up hiring was like, I'm so glad you're saying that because now that I know that, he's worked with plenty of people who act like they know what they're doing and then they don't and you gotta kind of scramble. But because I said that to him, he was like, okay, good. Because now I was like, I know what I want. I'll know what I want from the scene. But what I'm looking from you to do is to teach me, for me to be the student.
Right.
And then you so quickly learn it that then that's no longer a weakness of yours because you put it out there. And so now you go into the next movie and you've got, you have more in your tool belt.
So not only in movies, but just in life in general, if you open up and are vulnerable enough to say, I'm not sure how to do this, you can learn and get help and all of you win.
Yeah. For me though, this all goes back to core values, moral compass, mission statement. And it's like, I want to be real. I want to be a human being working with another human being in a field that I am an expert in, but I'm still learning in.
Now, you are a strong actress in your own right. Do you ever feel like you want? You are. You are. I worked with you. Do you ever find it hard being behind the camera as opposed to in front of the camera?
No, I think being in front of the camera is excruciating. You have to care what you look like. You gotta I couldn't drink last night because I had today. It's terrible. The scrutiny is awful. There's a real relaxation that I find and control that I like behind the camera. I have done bit parts on almost everything, like TV-wise, everything I've written on, I've been in. And I know I can do it. You know, at 30 Rock, I played the overly tan lady, and I had to say something really fast in front of 200 people, and I only got 2 takes or whatever, and you couldn't take a breath. And it was like, I was just wondering if you and director gave me a note, boom, did it. And I did it. And I remember thinking like, oh yeah, I can do this, because we auditioned a lot. We would go, you and I would go to Tony Roma's after a week of auditioning and like I tested for Saturday Night Live, like I was doing a lot of it, but I just don't like not having control. I don't like being vulnerable of like, is that okay? Did I give you what you wanted? Which I've done here, by the way. I've been like, is it going all right? But also I think like, and then if I were, because I've been asked why I don't put myself in the things that I create. And the answer is very easy for me. If I feel like someone else should be in that part, I'm going to give it to that person. Like, and I have a project that I'm working on right now that if it goes or whatever, I would be the lead of it. Yeah, and exciting. That's like the next big jump, right? Is to like write, direct, and star in something. And this character I wrote, what is basically me. Then I'd cast myself in it. But if I had, if I was sitting in a waiting room for something I wrote that I was going to direct, that I'm show running, and like Jennifer Garner walked in, I'd be like, yeah, give it to Jennifer Garner. And then like for smaller parts, it's just, you just have too much to do.
Yeah.
And then I also don't love looking at myself. Like in post or whatever.
Really?
Yeah.
Still, I think you are gorgeous, by the way. But I hear what you're saying, because I'm gorgeous too, and I don't like looking at myself.
It takes a special kind of person. It takes a Ben Affleck to be like, I love looking at myself.
Or can just get over looking at you and just see what you're actually doing, as opposed to
trying to fix or like
exactly. So you have worked with a lot of creative people. And by creative people, I mean goofballs. Like I know a lot of them. We know a lot of these good goofballs. Some of them are even cuckoo nutbirds.
Where is this question going? There's no question.
That's just a statement.
I've just worked with a lot of goofball cuckoo nutbirds.
How do you get creative people to flourish while still keeping them on track?
Most of our goofball friends that we know, they actually the little secret is that they work really hard, and that they've gotten to where they are because they've worked really hard. I think I get people on track because I walk the walk, and it's not really what I'm saying to them. It's how I'm acting.
It's by example.
And I learned that from Tina Fey. Like Tina just did, she wore all the hats and she did everything, and she did it all at a really high level. And the bar was just so high, and she's exceptional in that way. And she didn't like confrontation, so it wasn't as though she sat people down to be like, you need to do this or that, whatever. Everybody wanted to do right by her and work really hard for her. And so that's what I try to get from the people who work for and with me. If I notice that they're not, then I look to myself and go, okay, what am I doing? Am I coming in with a bad energy? For Blockers, we had like the older cast of parents, and we had the younger crew, right? And the younger crew always kind of got screwed because they had to wait all day for the people who had more experience to get their scenes done. And so when they would come onto set, I was really acutely aware of that, and I would just smile big and be like, yes, you're here, and make people really feel valued and feel like they are part of this. And then if you're listening to them too, I think that they'll walk the line of doing hard work.
Well, very cool. So lead by example.
Yeah.
Now, what would you say to a not as creative type leader? How should they work with the creative folk that are on their team? What would you want them to know about those creative folk?
It's probably, I would imagine that that's really a difficult, like that can be a real obstacle to have like a non-creative leader and then be a part of the creative team. I can
or they
imagine
have a creative person on their team.
Yeah. I mean, in those cases, if I'm the leader, I would just be trying to soak up whatever, that opposite attracts kind of thing, because that person is bringing something different to the table. And there was a reason that person got hired, that you know, like it's always about finding the value in that person. If you stop allowing the people that work for you to be who they are, I think it hurts your business and productivity, I guess.
So don't damper
bottom line.
But don't damper what is special about that person.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen that, you know, I know you asked about a non-creative, but like, I mean, that's really a lot of what happens in show business, because the people who have the money aren't the creative ones, and then they hire the creative ones and whatnot, and you gotta allow them to do what they're doing. But I've even seen it in writers' rooms, right? Like where you have 8 people who went to Harvard and were in the Harvard Lampoon, and then you've got me and Donald Glover who were, you know, improvisers.
Right.
What was so great is the embracing of the new voice and the new way of, you know, like what we brought to the table was yes-anding and being playful and not like cerebral joke telling, but just like maybe a more of an emotional thing coming in. Yeah. And so, and to Robert Carlock and Tina Fey's, you know, Tina's obviously an improviser, but like that was embraced.
Right.
Yeah.
You celebrate the diversity.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, here's a question that is, Girl Boss, as amazing as it was, only got 1 season. It was canceled.
It was divisive, and it was,
Yeah, it was canceled after 1 season. And when I heard the news, I got teary-eyed.
Oh.
I said some filthy words. And I broke up some IKEA furniture. It was already wobbly, so, you know, it was easy to do. But that wasn't even my show. You know, like, how do you deal with disappointment and setbacks?
I come from an athlete's frame of mind. And like, I ran track in college, and I was a sprinter. And so like, you'd win a race and then lose a race, you know, like within an hour, right? And so if I lost a race, I had to like shake it off and move onward. And you know, Girl Boss, my dream was to have a television show, and Girl Boss was that dream. And it was fraught because, you know, the company filed for bankruptcy 3 weeks before we aired. And I still am very proud of that show. Yeah. But I'm proud for the reasons of all the things I learned from the failure. All the things that, okay, yeah, I could have done that better. And it's taking the things that you learn from failures that allow you to keep moving forward. I mean, it really is just like, okay, onward. Just today, I have a project in which an actress passed on the project, and it was somebody I really wanted. And it was like, okay, I can't control other people or things or critics or, you know, executives who decide if your show keeps going or not. I can only control what I can control. And I think about that all the time. It's like, all right, it wasn't probably the right person for the role anyway. If she's not wanting to do it, we move on. There's a billion people out there. Like, who else can fit? You know?
Right.
And so it's a very long answer to say, like, you have to shake it off and learn from it, and then onward and upward.
And now to brag on you about running, you ran a marathon in Amsterdam.
Without training.
You were planning on running a half marathon.
That is correct.
And you hit the end of your half marathon and thought, I still feel pretty good.
There was a band. There was like a not a marching band, but it was like trombones and trumpets and stuff. And I was like, the weather was good.
And so you kept running.
I kept going.
And you almost died.
But then I was like, I have to finish it. I'm almost there. What am I going to stop at mile 21?
Yeah.
So 23 was pretty good. That was a pretty good mile. I crapped under a bridge. You know that.
I know.
And now the world does.
I wanted you to say it. I did not want to say it.
My body didn't know what was happening because I didn't want to be one of those people who get dehydrated and die. You know that happens.
Yeah, I know.
So at every stop, I like made myself like a little appetizer. Like I took a cracker and I put like that little protein goo on there, and I had a banana and I ate that, and I'd have some water, and then I kept running, and my body was like, "What are you doing?"
And out of crap came glory.
Well, it really, maybe don't put the crap part in there, but running a marathon you did not train for and doing it, I'll never do it again.
No.
I don't advise people to do that.
No.
But it really does. It does remind you that it is your brain and your thoughts. Thoughts become things. And if you tell yourself that you can do something, you can. You really can. And that's like, joking aside, like, you know, I've recently, you know, had people I care about be diagnosed with terminal illnesses and live for years and years and years with that idea of being in control of your thoughts and living and thinking positively.
I think you're a huge testament to that. I think you go for it. Whether you know it or not, you learn about it along the way, and you just wake up in the morning and tell yourself it's going to be great, and you make it great. And I think that's awesome. I think you're a pretty awesome lady, and I think
you're an awesome lady.
I think I'll keep you as best friend. Ladies and gentlemen, Kay Cannon.
Oh.
Yay.